We'll talk about scalar waves a lot tonight. We'll talk about scalar grids. A scalar wave is simply, it is a group of energy units that have the process, the natural process of internal fission and fusion. They are fixed points of energy that form in geometrical arrangements. They flash on and off. When they flash on through fission, they create particle and antiparticle. When they flash off, they go into fusion, come back together, and they disappear. Literally, our particles are flashing off and on, flashing off and on. So a scalar wave is a standing wave. You know, you have waves of light that move. This is a wave of light that stands, and it flashes on and on and off. On means manifestation simultaneously of the particle and antiparticle, and then flashes back off into antimatter, which is a state before matter manifestation. So when I talk about scalar wave templates, or scalar templates, these are the blueprints of energy, of light and sound frequency in the form of scalar waves that matter particles build up on. These are the frameworks of dimensionalization. There are levels of these that form a 15-dimensional structure of scalar wave grids that consciousness, to come into manifestation, needs to plug itself into. A level of your consciousness ends up going into each one of those 15 dimensions. That creates multidimensional identity. So we're going to get into that so you see basically the roadmap to your higher dimensional identity. I found this to be the most valuable paradigm I have ever seen. And it should be taught in every church and in every science class if anybody wants to teach people how to become who they really are. Okay, so we're going to get into that, and that takes us into the physics of spiritual identity, where spirituality is not just a concept. It's not just a vague promise of something once upon a time some God said and wrote down in a book. It is a living promise of energy. It's a natural way energy and consciousness work within a multidimensional system. So by understanding our parts and how our consciousness manifests through layers of scalar wave grids, we begin to realize that just like we have radio waves that we don't see, but they end up as sound in our radio, we might not see our templates, but there is a tangible structure to our soul and to our oversoul and to the higher identity levels that go beyond that. So we're going to look at that. Okay, we're going to get into a little bit of the secrets of fetal memory, reincarnation, and their connection to visitor contact. Now this could be a whole lecture unto itself. So I'm probably going to breeze past it. There is a free handout. It's a 7-pager. This goes with the chart pack, but it's not attached to it. This gets into the real nature of visitor contact, and I go right to the heart of the matter. And it gets into the relationship between the self here, God, ET, and what it all means, and where reincarnation fits into this. So I would suggest, instead of trying to hop, skip, and jump around that, I'll make a few little references here and there. You'll get more by reading that than the way it's put, okay? Because it's very sequential in the way I have it in the writing. So you'll have those. You don't have to buy them. They'll be there for free. Okay. Becoming your own expert. This is something we're going to need to do, because right now people who are having contact, even little bits of contact or out-of-body experiences, these are the people who have more knowledge about how consciousness is working than the experts do up there. The government is not going to be able to help you with this. They can try, but they don't have any more knowledge than you do, really, except for the ones that are hiding all the knowledge from us and causing half of the problems. You can go to clergy, but clergy don't understand anymore the tangible structure of the soul. They're not going to tell you about multidimensional identity. You're going to need to be able to have enough confidence in yourself to say, I'm going to learn to trust myself. I'm going to learn to ground that higher identity of mine, and that's going to be my guide. I'm going to go to my master within and make my own direct connection to source, whatever I choose to call that source, higher power, God, whatever I want to call it. This is a time when you are at the leading edge of a new wave of evolution. That is what's happening here. And it's exciting and it's wonderful. But we need to realize when you're in the front wave, there's nobody there to ask questions and to point the way. We're going to have to become our own leaders. So I'm going to cover a little bit about what we're going to do, how to be empowered as a contactee and start taking control of how you want your experience to go, what you're going to do with it. Okay, I'm going to get into a little bit of your role as an empowered contactee, how you can help other people, what you can do to assist in the mass drama that's going on here. Because there are things you can do, and revolution isn't it. That's just going to get you flattened by the government forces and things. It's not about revolution, it's about re-evolution. So we're going to get into that a little bit. And I'm sorry if I'm talking fast. I want to get through this so I can get this information to you before it's 5 o'clock and they're telling me I have to stop immediately. Because we have a real tight deadline tonight. I can't run over. Okay. Let's see. Initiating positive contact. We're going to get into a basic technique. We started it in the last workshop. We're going to go over it again because this is a technique we're going to use when we go out in the field. So we'll go over this technique. We will also go over the Maharic Seal technique again because honestly, I don't want to take anybody out to do any kind of energy work unless they're willing enough to do the Maharic seal. Because you put yourself in danger if you don't have that frequency of 12-dimensional frequency in your field. So this is something that you can teach other people. You know, it's simple, it's easy, spread the word, get them to use it, particularly in contact if you're going out looking for UFOs, okay? We're going to get into a little bit, and it's not very long, the protocols for the Emerald Order Melchizedek Cloister and the Guardian Alliance. They have certain things that they look for as far as the type of people that they're willing to contact. They're willing to work with anybody, but attitude is important. You know, people that come in with attitudes and egos all puffed up and, yeah, prove this to me, prove that to me, they don't even talk to them. You know, they don't have time for this. They're working on the planetary grids right now to make sure everything works out okay for all of us. So if you're sincere and you're interested in the work and you want to communicate with them, there are a set of protocols that they have suggested that you can begin working at home with yourself to begin the process of initiating first subtle contact. If you're willing to work with the techniques to get subtle contact, then at some point they will verify for you in a physical form of some sort. And it will be very personal. It has nothing to do with me. It's about if any of you want to communicate with them. And I tell you, boy, do they have a lot of information. Okay. And we'll basically cover really quick a little bit of the Emerald Covenant, which was the interstellar treaty that was made 248,000 years ago that promised human evolution down here would get to be back where it was supposed to be in the first place, and about the diamond vision, which is the vision of the diamond sun DNA, the original 12-strand human imprint, and moving human evolution, at least our own, back into that pattern before it gets hijacked out from under us by the other hybridization programs. All right, so by the end of this, hopefully, we may not have time to do biofield clearing here. We can do that later. We can work on that, in fact, out in the field if we have to, okay? That's more like a hands-on kind of, energy work thing, and I've taught that before in strange situations like field work, so I've done it in the Great Pyramid, actually, over in Egypt. So we can do it in the field. All right, now, can we go to the next slide? I do apologize for talking fast, but like I said, it's all in writing, so you will get it in writing. If I'm losing you just here, well, okay, let that go, what are we on now? That kind of thing. I talk fast because I have a tremendous amount of information to cover that it could take me 12 hours to talk to you, and you'd be asleep by then, and we'd get that anyway. Okay. The Earth-human race lines. This is where we get into the different DNA sun matrices. They call them sun matrices because of the diagrams that they use. They have a particular form of diagram, I'll show you that in a couple minutes, that they use to chart strand templates. And these are not the same type of tests that our scientists are using right now to chart the chemical components and even the frequency signatures that are underneath the chemical components. It's a whole different form of testing that goes into the structure of the scalar templates themselves. The diagrams are used to show what strands are where, and I'll show you the beginning parts of the diagrams. They get very, very intricate, actually, but we don't have to go into that for this. What I want to get across is basically who's who in this game and who we are in relation to that. Okay. We have the star seeds and the DNA substrand matrices. The star seeds, what are called star seeds here? There's a difference between Earth seeds and star seeds. They're both human, but the star seeds are hybrid humans. They're a little bit different. Even in the original imprint for the human, for manifesting humans down in the Earth realms, the original creators created a group of races called the cloister races. These cloister races held the strand imprints for strands 7 through 12, as well as a single strand that went with the root race that they were connected to. So there's a whole evolutionary plan involved here. The cloister races and the gene lines that have come out of those from ancient times are considered one of the starseed lines. There are other starseed lines that were made from taking those cloister races and then recombining them with other things. So we have several starseed lines, and I would like you to be able to understand that because some of you probably fit into all of those categories, and it's okay. Some of them have challenges as far as what the DNA is doing, but that can be fixed. And as long as you know that, there's no problem. So I just want to get across to you a little bit about the starseed and who they are. You can read a lot of this, you can read all of this in the chart packs. I'll just go through little points that I want to hit. Okay, right in here, in this section, I talk about the 7 root races and the 5 cloister races. These were seeded 3 different times on this planet, and the last time was about 800,000 years ago. That was the 3rd seeding. There were 2 major seedings before that, and I believe the first one was about 550 million years ago. So this is an ancient, ancient race. What our scientists are finding so far doesn't tell hardly anything about the story of what the human lineage is. Okay, with the 7 root races and 5 cloister races, the root races came in different cycles. You would have For example, the Atlanteans were one root race. That was, they believed, 1, 2, 3, 4th root race. They would come in for a cycle of time, and then they would phase out, and the next root race would start to come in. And there were changes in the DNA and changes in consciousness that went with this. We're part of the 5th root race, which is the Aryan root race. And all of the root races had all of the colors. So it wasn't just, one was black, one was brown, one was white, one was red, one was yellow. It wasn't that. Every one of the root races had all of the skin colors represented. Okay, now we're on the Aryan root race cycle. This cycle was involved with activating strand 4 in the DNA template. The other root races filled up the imprints for DNA strand 1, 2, and 3. What we really have right now is 3-strand consciousness, and we have a 3-strand biology. We wouldn't have it in 3D if we didn't, but science is only detecting the double helix. They're not detecting other coding in the double helix that goes down the dimensional scale and up the dimensional scale. That's why they're not finding it yet. Eventually, when they have more sensitive equipment, they will. So we are entering a cycle, and I'm going to get into it at the end of this a little bit, where 4th strand activation creates all sorts of neat things. All of a sudden, the consciousness is not just going to be 3-dimensional. It's going to move into 4th-dimensional perception. What we're experiencing here with the visitor phenomena is a natural part of our evolution because of the stage of the race cycle that we're in. It is natural now that we'll begin perceiving what's in the higher dimensional fields and the higher time cycles. It's a very natural thing. It may seem strange, but if you understand the evolutionary blueprint, which I'm going to try to give you at least some part of here, if you want to really understand it, it's described in very deep detail in Voyager's book 2, The Secrets of Mente. It gets into the creation of it, who created it, how exactly it created it, which races went where, it's very detailed. And I don't think I could remember all of it if I tried. It's a lot of information, but it's there. If you want to understand from the interstellar race perspective of where the human race came from, it's worth reading. It's fascinating. Okay, so we have basically the cloister races with the 12-strand template. These are called the Diamond Sun DNA. So the original human imprint was called the Diamond Sun DNA matrix. That's a 12-strand DNA matrix. There are several other sun matrices that have a bit different strand content, some higher and some lower. The cloister race human is considered a hybrid human compared to the root races because it contains within it the coding of the human level of harmonic 2 and harmonic 3, which is dimensions 4, 5, and 6, and 7, 8, and 9. It has those codings also in it. So it's an extraterrestrial human as well as an earthbound human. Okay, we go through the cloister races. They're a pretty normal part. Then we get into some other types of experiments that have been done. Get down to the bottom here. So through the course of Earth human history, there have been further hybridizations with various interstellar races, creating more varieties of star seeds among the Earth seed root race populations. This is like root awakening. First of all, we walk around, everybody's human. We don't realize some of us are Earth seeds, some of us are star seeds, and it goes right down to the DNA substrand matrices. A substrand matrix is, and I'll show you when I show you the diagrams of how they chart the strands. You'd have a strand, and then you have all these little codes in the strand. The little codes determine the substrand matrices. What exactly is the scalar coding in there? And that will determine what the manifestation template will be. Okay, we can go to the next one. Okay. Now, one of the other hybridization programs that has been here from the beginning of the 3rd seeding, 300,000 years ago, they put them in. They took the cloister race human and they combined it with what was the original seed race that the original human was seeded into to create the human pattern from harmonic 2, from dimensions 4, 5, and 6. The original seed race for the humans was called an Orifeme. Now, an Orifeme race is a composite gene code. It's part Syrian azurite. These are the Syrian blues that some people see and that you find paintings of in Egypt in some of the hieroglyphics that think they show blue people. These are real people, and they're from harmonic 2, dimensions 4, 5, and 6, that reality system. We're part azurite. We're part Lyran Syrian Anhazi, which are the Syrian whites that a lot of people run into. I think the lady that was involved with Ray Fowler's book was involved with the Syrian whites. And up higher, see, we're going up the harmonics here. We're going up the dimensional scale. We have the Orifeme that were in harmonic 2, dimensions 4, 5, and 6. And the azurites were in that same dimensional frequency band, that same harmonic. Going up further, out of density a little bit more, up further, we had the Anhazi. They're from dimensions 7 through 9. You go up to the next harmonic, a little bit less dense matter, you get into the Elohim Emerald Order. Now, this is not the same thing as the Elohim. The Elohim were a digressive version of those. You hear a lot about Elohim sometimes in ancient texts and those kind of things. So originally, the human line came out of the, on harmonic 5, dimensions 15, 14, and 13. We were the Melchizedek, Cloister, Brenoa. Now, these are not even, this is a state of being not even in form yet. It's antimatter. It is a scalar consciousness, radiation, consciousness as pure conscious radiation. Okay. Melchizedek Cloister is the lineage we came out of from harmonic 5. From harmonic 4, we went into the Elohim Emerald Order, where we started to go into density, into the prematter liquid light densities. From there, we moved down into harmonic 3, the Lyran Syrian, then to harmonic 2 with the Azurite. You take the Azurite and combine it with the Anhazi, and you end up with an Orpheme, and that's the seed race that the original human was put into. The original human was called the Puranissi, and it was created on a planet called Tara, which is the same place of Earth, but it's the Earth of the past and also the Earth of the future. The Earth in harmonic 2, dimensions 4, 5, and 6, is referred to as Tara. The Earth in harmonic 3, dimensions 7, 8, and 9, is referred to as Gaia. So in the New Age movement, you hear a lot about Tara, Gaia, what is this place anyway? They're all different harmonics of matter manifestation of the same planet. We're on the first level of density. So that I wanted you to understand the differences there between the harmonics. So this is the basic human lineage, and it's a very, very ancient race. There's a hybrid strain created by taking the Orpheme and combining it with the Cloister race. This created a DNA strand template of 24 to 48 strand potential. Not just the diamond sun. It had the diamond sun in it, but it could transmute further, completely out of the time matrix. It could fully master, if all those codes were activated, the full amount of consciousness of what's called an ultra-terrestrial, which is beyond space-time and matter. And I don't know, some of you were in the lecture I had before, I showed the energy matrix, beyond dimensionalization. These are the levels of consciousness that correspond to the levels of consciousness beyond dimensionalization. So the hybrid type is really it's an Orpheme hybrid, and today they call them indigo children. That's what an indigo child is. It not only has the 12-strand DNA template of the original human, it holds the potential of 24 to 48 strands. This is important when we come to Earth grid mechanics, because there's a part of the sciences of physics that our scientists haven't identified yet. But we are bioelectric units. We are conduits, and our DNA is a conduit to run energy from the interdimensional spectrum down into the Earth. A being that can hold 24 to 48 frequencies of energy, of consciousness, has the power to directly affect the planetary scalar grids and change them. And that's why there are a fleet of indigos coming in to help recode these planetary grids so this place doesn't go into bullshit. And it's not going to. They're doing very, very well with it. It started 100 years ago because they knew this time frame was coming. They didn't know exactly how to go, but they were preparing with the indigos coming in 100 years ago, and progressively more and more coming in. So now we have another type of starseed that we're aware of, the indigo child, the Orpheme. These are the elder races. These are the founder race humans. When an Orpheme incarnates, it doesn't incarnate from the 3rd to 6th dimension. A regular root race person would incarnate somewhere between the 3rd and 6th dimension. That means your consciousness was at one of those dimensional levels, and that's where it went into fetal integration from. With the indigo imprint, the minimum that dimension it will incarnate from is D13. So they hold large amounts of consciousness in the body. That's where they can access a lot of information. And they also, being on the planet, through that critical mass that I've talked about before, they directly affect the acceleration rate of the DNA of everything on the planet. So they've come here to help humans get the 12 strand back, and then you can work on getting the higher strand content back. All right, so the Emerald Order, Orpheme, are basically what we call them. I just refer to them as the Emerald Order or the Indigos. Indigo children, though, there's a lot of misunderstanding about that word in the New Age movement because they identify them basically with ADD and all that kind of stuff. That's an indigo that's having a problem grounding. Okay. All right, let's see. All right, the indigo imprint is called the Emerald Sun. The Emerald Sun DNA matrix, because the Emerald Order is a very ancient name. It's a translation of an ancient name that had to do with certain frequencies coming out of the ultra-terrestrial levels of consciousness beyond manifestation. So they're known as the Emerald Order. And so the DNA is kind of called the Emerald Sun. It's just points of reference. They name them these things so we have a way to categorize them, and a way to identify the differences between the DNA templates. Okay? All right, and another thing here I want to mention. These are the primary Grail lines, or the Christ jig lines. They were here long before the Christ story started, but Christ was one of the emerald or he was an indigo child. He had full 12 strands activated, and he had the ability to, if he needed to, activate 24 to 48. So that the line, there was a line of children that came from the Christ-like families that through the Council of Nicaea and a bunch of other groups, and the Council of Nicaea in 325 AD, they edited out much of the family lines of the Christ, so nobody would know that there were descendants left behind. And there are, and there still are. There may be many people in this room that may be part of the Christ-like lines. It simply means you have a DNA imprint that will allow you to anchor and bring into full embodiment at least 12 dimensions of consciousness. Because what's called Christ consciousness, which we'll talk about, actually I talk about it very deeply in that little handout that you can get. I explain very clearly what Christ consciousness really is. It's not just a concept, and it's not just a spiritual feeling. It's both of those, but it is also a physics reality. It is an integration of full 12th dimensional consciousness into an embodiment. That's what Christ had. That's what he's trying to tell us about. So there's a lot of validity to the ancient stories, but they took out the guts. They took out the science by which we could understand. They took out the tangible structure of the soul. That was the roadmap. That's why it's being given back now. Okay, move on to the next one. Am I going too fast? Great. Sometimes I remind myself of a record on 78. Okay, now, there's a secondary gray line that emerged about 248,000 years ago. It was actually permitted to occur here. It was a hybridization program permitted here to assist the human races and the human cloister races that had become contaminated earlier by Anunnaki forced hybridization programs. The Anunnaki are a Syrian race that have digressive gene codes. They can't go any higher than D11. Most of them are D9. So they only have 9 to 11 strand templates. That when you interbreed something with that strand template with something with a higher, eventually it will bring down the higher strand template. And that's what happened to a lot of the root races and some of the cloister races here. They got contaminated with the Anunnaki hybridization programs, and they lost their own template. They no longer had the 12-strand potential, and that caused a lot of problems, and they're still going on. So there was another race that was created that combined an ancient race called the Nephilim, which was actually from the second seeding. There were big wars fought over this one. The Nephilim were Anunnaki that came down and interbred with human females and created a race that in the Bible was called the race of giants that terrorized human beings, and they were literally kicked off the planet, and there were wars fought. And this was in the second seeding, more than 800,000 years ago. So what was done, because the Nephilim imprint has part Anunnaki and part human, the highest of both, we were allowed to bring them back in an agreement to help the other Earth humans that had the Syrian Anunnaki contamination in their coding. These were a little bit different because they weren't regular Nephilim that had something called a reverse matrix, where actually the scalar patterns were running in reverse so they could not plug into the higher consciousness. They were a Nephilim version that combined with an Elohim matrix, these are families of consciousness very high up that, there will be books on that, but I'm not even trying to go into it. But when you combine the Elohim that had its coding pretty well intact with the Nephilim imprint, it created a race that could be brought in here that could be hybridized into the Anunnaki human strains that were digressing and bring them back up. This is where the story of the two Christs came from, because there were two Christs, but it started long before Christ, before the Christ period. And when the first Christ was born in 12 BC, we call him Joshua 12, he was the one that came in as an indigo child and had the full 12-strand coding. There was another one born in 7 BC that came in, he was part Nephilim. These were the Nephilim race lines that were meant to help the evolution of the humans that had the Anunnaki code digression. And it's called the Ruby Sun DNA matrix. It has 9 to 11 strands. It doesn't go as high as the 12-strand pattern. It's the step in between to get the people who had very digressive gene codes in that in-between step where they could transfer over to hold the 12-strand pattern. That's where the second Christ lines came in. So there are two Grail lines, and there are descendants of both of them running around with us today. And that's one of the things that visitors look for, because they're looking for this coding to amp up their own hybridization programs. Okay? So if we can understand a little bit about this visitor, then this has been going on for ages. It's not new. Sure. Yes.
So what?
Some of them are coming back. And usually the ones that are coming back in are the ones from Nibiru, because they're part of the Anu takeover agenda. They're pretending they're our creator guys. Okay. I'm sorry. Okay. You know, I'm going to get back on this. I will probably try to save questions for the end because I want to get to the guts of this, which is just showing you the roadmap to your parts so you can start playing with them and remembering they're there. And it'll be then it's all in your hands. You'll be fine once you realize how easy it is. So anyway, these are the race lines. We have another group is a hybrid race that has up to an 11-strand potential, but the codes are running in reverse. It's called a low little son DNA matrix. It's out of the Anu Elohim matrix. This is where you get all the stories of the ancient Anu, the god Anu, and all the stories about Anu and that kind of stuff that's coming up out of the Sumerian thing. This is also the same matrix that these days, this DNA calls itself Jehovah. So this is the line of, when you read the Bible and it talks about Jehovah, they put that word in there, okay? And that's scary for a lot of people, because a lot of people think that it's a real whole, full, that's it, that's the name of God, and if you don't call God Jehovah, then you're not worshiping God, and that's not the way it is. That is a twist that was put in there to mislead us into worshiping Anu, which is a matrix of consciousness that severed itself from the higher levels and wanted to play Creator God. So there are higher things. They took our sacred teachings and they twisted them. That's what's so aggravating. That infuriated me, because I remember my incarnations of being a part of these ascension teams and slaving over manuscripts and trying to bring them through like I'm not doing it now, and to watch what they've done with it. That's why I teach it with zeal. When I teach about the spiritual stuff, I know it works, I know it's real. I was part of it for thousands of years. So were you. You can remember just like that. And then these guys aren't going to play games with us anymore. They're playing games again. They're contacting certain members, particularly incarnate members of their matrices, their star seeds, trying to get them to run their agenda without telling them what that agenda is. And that's why we're exposing what the agendas are, because nobody else is. They're playing games behind the scenes. They're saying, oh, we're your family, you know, follow us, we'll teach you this, we'll teach you that. But they're not revealing what the core agenda is behind it. So somebody has to, and that's why the Elohai are coming in. That's why the Emerald Order is coming in and saying, well, you don't have to believe us. And you know, you're welcome to believe anything that talks to you from anywhere, from example, you get a spaceship. But it might be worth considering, you know, what we're telling you too. So it's a personal opinion, whatever you want to choose to believe. All right, with the Elohim, the Anu Elohim hybrids, there are races of beings that have been here. They came up through the Knights Templar lines that you hear about in history. They were a group of them, but they started, you know, a long time before that. The worst ones we're having a real problem with are, let's see, are they on here? Yeah, the Black Sun DNA matrix. These are the reptilian human hybrids that are, they look like humans, but in the substrand DNA matrices, they have draconian codes. Now, draconians are a different matrix of consciousness. They're not of the Elohai or the Elohim. They're out of the family of consciousness of in the non-densities. They're just called the Seraphi. And just like the Elohai had certain fallen members that were called the Elohim, the Seraphi had fallen members called the Seraphim. So the Seraphim lines were the reptilian lines. They're responsible for a lot of the reptile creatures around. Some of them are fine if they're connected to the Seraphi matrix. But the ones of the Seraphim, just like the Elohim, broke their connection to their higher levels because they wanted to play creator gods. When we're dealing with the Black Sun DNA human hybrids here, we're dealing with incarnate members of the Seraphim draconian matrix. But once they get in human form, they're very controlled up there. They don't get free will. They don't treat them that way. Once they're in human form, if any of you happen to be incarnates of that matrix, you don't have to play that game anymore. That's what they don't want you to know. Because if any of their people down here knew what the game really was, they'd be out of there in a second and say, fine, you know, I'm glad I'm reptilian, I'm proud of it, but you know what, I don't like your agenda. I'll choose freedom. And that's the choice we all have. This is why it's important to realize at least some of the history of the DNA coding that's involved in the human lineage. So we can start to understand, what are these visitors doing here? Why are they here? Why are contactees chosen and others not chosen? There are answers to those questions, and it lies in the DNA. Okay, let's see. All right, the one thing that I'd always want to stress is, even if you happen to be a person who has some of the digressive strains, bioregenesis techniques, the techniques that they're bringing in with using internal scalar grid mechanics, directing it with your own consciousness, you can begin to repair your template. No matter what's done to it, it can be reversed. Anything in a human form still has a dormant imprint somewhere of the original potential for 12-strand pattern. It's kind of like a hologram. The little parts will always contain the imprint of the whole somewhere in there. So it's always a potential to choose to consciously evolve. Say, okay, I'm going to figure out what I am. I'm going to open up to my higher parts of my own identity and find out what I'm connected to and what I need to do next. It's conscious evolution that the Elohim or Elohim matrix is trying to get us to become aware of. We can flip. Okay, primary hybrid types. So just a quick, recap of it in a little bit clearer form. We have the diamond suns, cloister race humans, the emerald suns, and the ruby suns. They're the ones working the emerald order agenda. Okay, the pro-human, help humans evolve back to their original potential agenda. You have the Belil suns, and there's several different versions of these. You have the Templar suns, which are 11-strand Nephilim reverse matrix. You have the low Belil that we talked about. There's several different types in there, including some of the Anunnaki strains. These are all Anunnaki strains. High Belil was actually, these weren't too bad. They were Nephites. It was another hybridization experiment sent a long time ago. I think J.J. Hurtak talks about the Nephites and the return of the Nephites in his Kizvinan book. And they were, again, a hybridization experiment trying to help the people with the reptilian coding to get back online with the ascension path. Because that's what we're talking about. We're talking about DNA codes that go directly into correspondence with what dimensional levels of consciousness you can pull into the body. And the more dimensional levels of consciousness you pull into the body, progressively less dense the body matter gets, because it changes the angular rotation of particle spin on the particles. There's a whole process here. It's a science. It's a science of ascension. And this was the standard science for millions of years, and it still is the standard science in most of the universal systems. We have been in quarantine down here, and it's about time we came out of it. So this is what I'm talking about. We have a potential that the only thing we hear about these days is some kind of lame promise that religions promise us, but for 2,000 years they've been promising, and everybody's still here. It hasn't worked. The promises alone don't do it. You need to understand the mechanics involved, and that's what we're bringing through. Okay, and then we have the black suns, which are the Neutronians, and there's several different versions of them. The Nephilim are the ones that are the hybrids in human form. They're humans walking around with reptilian coding, and they're the ones that some of them can shapeshift. And I've heard reports of people saying, gosh, my father turned around and I swear to God he was a reptile. And then he turned around again and he wasn't. I'm scared to death of my father. I've had people say this to me. In fact, I remember Linda Howe, when Howe had talked to me once, and she said, do you know anything about this stuff? Because I had several people call me this week and tell me this really bizarre thing, and they don't know each other. They're completely different people. They're talking about the Nephilim races. And these are the people, when we talk about the secret government and the people that are messing with us, the one world order, these are the guys that are behind it. These are the guys that were behind the Council of Nicaea. They were behind the Spanish Inquisitions. They were behind the burning of the Cathars. They were behind the destruction of the Templars. Anybody that had any information about the way ascension really worked or about the two Christs, they made sure they got rid of. Real Christian folks these were. Burn them. Figure it out later. Maybe they're not well, too bad. At least get rid of them, then we don't have to worry about it. We have been conned here in our civilization into believing things that are not true. And the things that were true, that were our heritage, were taken away from us. And it's about time we found out so we can choose what we're going to believe. And we can reclaim, if we want to, what's ours, which is the genetic potential to experience the ascension. And it's also the same process by which you block electromagnetic pulse frequencies that are going to try to put you under mind control. Spiritual development is a science, and it creates scientific results in your biofields that will create immunity to all the nonsense the negative agendas are running here. That's why they don't want you to know this. You know this, you're going to be a free man or woman. You're going to be a free person. You're going to be self-sovereign, and no being, I don't care if it's a president, a king, a dictator, or an ET, is going to govern you once you learn to find the master within and govern yourself. Okay, let's see. Okay, and here again, there's word sound refers to the DNA template. Okay, there's another little thing I want to point out. Here's a little twist. You get this a lot in the channel groups. They say, council of so-and-so. The council of so-and-so. They use numbers. Okay. They use numbers to describe them. Council 12, council 24, or council this, that. People are figuring, oh, well, there's 24 people on this council, or there's 9 people on this council. Nope. It's a little code that they're using. It's actually their signature. Council of 9, for instance, would be such as the 9-strand guys right here. It would be the Axios, Pleiadian, Nephilim, Dracos that come in from Nibiru. The ones that are the Nephilim that somebody said that were, they have been seen recently, walking around on Earth, the giants. They have the 9-strand pattern. Council of 9. Council of 12 is a Turanicium original human council. Council of 24 is an Emerald Order Orpheum Council. So when you see these references in some of the channel stuff or the ET stuff that's out there, this is what they're talking about. They're giving little clues as to who they really are without telling you anything, unless you know the codes. This is one of the little secret codes, okay? Let's see, we can look at this. Okay, let's see, can we bring that down so you can see the top? Yeah, here we go, okay. This diagram is used to chart DNA templates. It's not what they look like if you look at them under a very powerful microscope. It's the pattern they use to be able to spread them out, because it's all in the same place. It all will manifest in a double helix because of the polarity that you have from D12 on down. You have polarity, so you have a double helix, a base electrical and a base magnetic helix. The 12-strand diagram is used to show the placement of strands, and when they get really into it, when they're really mapping DNA, talk about mapping DNA, our scientists should check this stuff out. It is extremely sophisticated. There are basically 12 primary codes or substrands in each strand, and then there are many, many codes built up upon those. So there are layer upon layer of scalar patterns, frequency patterns, that hold levels of consciousness into the body that create the template that your particles progressively build up matter density upon. So we all have one of these. Now this one is the 12-strand DNA matrix, I believe. Yes, 12 dimensions of consciousness in the body and form that has this template, once this template is activated. Okay, can we go to the next one? This stuff you can read when you do the paperwork on it, because it really was applied to other things. Now, this is the 24-strand. It's called the double diamond, but it's actually one of the emerald sun matrices. We were breaking them down even further in this other program we did on indigo children. But the double diamond is also one of the emerald sun, indigo imprints. So it's 24-strand DNA matrix. There are 24 strands instead of the 12, and each of those would have their levels of coding. That type of being can hold 24 levels of consciousness into the body. Okay, we put the next one. This is the High Council Emerald Orb. That is a type 1 indigo channel. It's 48-strand potential. They don't come in with it activated. It will activate if they need it to run energy through the planetary grids, because if they stayed activated on that level the whole time, they'd blow the planet up. You couldn't have more than 5 beings with this coding fully activated, running that amount of energy through their bodies on the planet without literally crashing the planetary grids. So there people coming in on these imprints, on these birthing biological imprints, these are done by contract. They're appointed, and they only come in on planetary service missions. You don't just joyride in an indigo imprint because it might be neat to experience. You'll get your personal stuff, but you're here to do something that affects the race evolution. So that's what really having these imprints available for biology down here is for. It's for when there's crisis or when there's digression is happening. They will bring in imprint, beings with the imprints like these to begin amping up again the race gene code potential, so we don't lose the 12-step potential here. So the root races have a chance to become what they were intended to be in the first place. Okay, if we can go on to the next one. Okay. Now, just to show the difference, see the darker coloring on this one? This is the Templar Sun, 11-strand reverse DNA matrix. That's the Nephilim, one of the types of Nephilim. They have strands missing, because everything is supposed to come in sets of 12. The manifestation patterns come down in sets of 12. Like when you incarnate, for instance, you come in cycles of 12. One of you implies 11 more. And it's a base 12 mathematical system all the way up in the harmonics. So this would be the Nephilim imprint. The coding in the strands does not allow for strand fusion, which means in the normal imprints, when they activate, the strands in a normal 12-strand pattern will begin to fuse together, and the codings here will merge with here and change to a different coding, which progressively changes the density level of the cellular structure. When you get into the Nephilim, they can't undergo strand fusion any more than to second density. So they could ascend up into harmonic 2, dimensions 4, 5, and 6, but they could not biologically take their body any further than that. Their consciousness can be stationed up in the higher dimensions, up to dimension 11. What this creates for them is an overlord consciousness stuck up in D11 that manipulates this little puppet down here. And unfortunately, the little puppet down here is a person who doesn't realize what's happening with its gene code, that kind of thing. So the Nephilim have a lot of problems, just like the Anunnaki or the Anu humans have a lot of problems. We have these levels of consciousness. They do direct us. They'll either do it consciously or unconsciously, but when you integrate it, you realize it's you. Okay? All right, so that's the Nephilim imprint, 11-strand reverse. You go next one, please? Okay, this is the Blue Sun, 10-strand part reverse DNA matrix. It has part of the dark strands and part of the light. I mean, some of them can plug in and some of them can't. It's still an evolutionary problem. They cannot undergo cellular transmutation beyond second density, for instance, 4, 5, and 6. These guys that have these messed up matrices are stuck in time. They can't completely stand back out into non-form, which is the original form that all consciousness emerges out of. So it's a problem of evolution becoming stuck in time. You have to either regain your connection to the perpetual supply of energy coming from source. If you sever that connection and your DNA template can't hold it anymore, you become finite unless you suck energy off other things that have energy coming through them. So the matrices of consciousness that have these problems, the biologies that have these problems, create beings who have a consciousness that needs to suck energy off other people or other planetary systems. They use people, and they do it as instinct because they need it to survive. What they really need is bioregenesis. But it all depends on whether they're willing to work with the law of one or not, whether they're willing to say, I won't violate any other races. That's where these problems started, where beings up in the higher levels decide they want to be creator gods, and they want to manipulate and exploit. And that is not, that doesn't work within the natural laws of universal physics or the natural laws of spirituality. And they made choices to sever themselves from the rest of creation in order to try to control things and manipulate things. So that's how they ended up in these predicaments in the first place. We're going to switch that. I'm going to go through sort of fast. This is another one of the digressive matrices. It's a 9-strand reverse DNA matrix. This is the 666 pattern. This is why it's called that. It has to do with the 6th code and the 6th strand being taken out. It's very specific. It's in the Mente book, Voyager's Secrets of Mente. This pattern is explained. That was the original meaning of the 666. It was a band, a genetic band that was put on some of the Nephilim races, the Draconian Nephilim. There were Nephilim that got involved with the Draconian and made their clothes worse. They're the ones that came in and were forcing breeding on females, on human females. And they created the higher races, the higher guardian races, literally created a ban on them coming here. They could come here, but they couldn't interbreed anymore because they put in what's called a DNA seal. They blocked purposely certain strands within the race morphogenetic field that controls the whole template for their race, and they blocked it until they would stop abusing other forms because they were coming in here and they were raping women and they were making them have babies to populate the earth with their kind so they could take over for the Draconian matrix. So the 666 seal, sign of the beast. They're back, and that's a lot of what was referred to in the biblical teachings. They took a lot of what it meant out, but they were referring to the races, the sign of the beast. These were the beasts, and unfortunately, they're very pretty, a lot of them. They're rather tall. They can be anywhere from about 7 to 11. I've seen some of them, but usually the ones that contact are about 7 feet tall. Many of them are beautiful blondes. They have platinum blonde hair and the most beautiful faces, and they're sweet and soft-spoken and seem oh so spiritual. They can run a con like you've never seen. They like to tell you that you were aged once upon a time, and that because they enhanced you genetically, look what you became. And they're coming back to raise you up higher. No, they're coming back to hijack your evolution. They didn't create you in the first place. So this is one of the cons that's being run. The New Age movement is the big space where this is being run. A lot of their angels are actually these guys, the angels communicating and channeling. These days, when an angel says it wants to talk to you, ask for its resume. Be polite, but ask for its resume. Ask it questions. Don't just assume it's something, it is what it says it is. Give it some tests. And you can do that better when you know where your parts are and where your higher dimensional levels are, and you can integrate those. Okay, this is the Black Sun, classic Black Sun reptilian tungsten in reverse. This is what the Nephilim are running around with. It's the template of the guys that did the Cathar executions and the Council of Nicaea, and the guys that are running the secret government now here that had signed the treaties with the Zetas and then got their karma back by having the Zetas sign the treaties with the Dracos, and now they're under control of the Dracos and they don't really want to be. So that's where you're getting all the problems in the Illuminati factions now. Most of the Illuminati factions are out of this DNA imprint. They're humans, but their substrand matrices are coded to this. They don't have the 12-strand pattern potential. They can go through bioregenesis to get it back, but most of them would care less. They're more interested in running control agendas. But if you ever know of anybody that thinks it might be on, they want to do bioregenesis, send them my way. I'll be glad to teach them. Because we have negative agendas. But the people and the beings involved, it's ignorance, not evil. They're not evil. They're ignorant to the law of one, to the natural law of physics, universal, unified field physics, that allows everything to function harmoniously. They get trapped in control agendas and they don't know how to do it any better. They think they have to survive by dominating other races. They need healing, is what they need. They're still part of us because we all came out this little paper I have over there, a 7-pager, explains some very interesting things about where we all came out of the common source. So we are much more related to these beings, all of us. All beings in the universe are much more related than most people realize. And that paper will get into that, so I don't have to do a 20-minute one on that. Okay. Let's see. Okay. Humans are chosen for visitor contact. This is important to know. About 90% of all contemporary Earth humans who are being contacted by visitors are of the 3 primary ancient human hybrid starseed race lines. Either the gray lines, which would be the emerald, the diamond, the ruby sun DNA templates, or the Anno Elohim, which would be the Belil Sun templates, which included the Templar template, or the Nephilim Reptilian Black Sun templates. There's a few others and like crosses between them in there. They're the 3 primary contactees. If you're a contactee, there's a very, very good chance that you fit into one of these categories. There's a very good chance you might be one of the messianic lines. They call them messianic, they call them Christ lines, they call them grail lines, whatever you want to call them. The ones that have the ascension. Okay. Humans are chosen for visitor contact. This is important to know. About 90% of all contemporary Earth humans who are being contacted by visitors are of the 3 primary ancient human hybrid starseed race lines. Either the gray lines, which would be the emerald, the diamond, the ruby sun DNA templates, or the Anno Elohim, which would be the Belil Sun templates, which included the Templar template, or the Nephilim Reptilian Black Sun templates. There's a few others and like crosses between them in there. They're the 3 primary contactees. If you're a contactee, there's a very, very good chance that you fit into one of these categories. There's a very good chance you might be one of the messianic lines. They call them messianic, they call them Christ lines, they call them grail lines, whatever you want to call them. The ones that have the ascension potential. And anybody can get it back if you do biogenesis, but some are born with it, so it activates faster if you have it. It helps to know if you happen to be out of the Nephilim Reptilian line. That does not mean you have to buy their nonsense. That does not mean you have to honor their agenda. You can very politely decline, say, guess what, I got aware, I don't have to do this. And you can learn to take control of your biofields, and then they can't control it. Then you wait till they heal, you can help them heal, but you get yourself together and heal first. Okay, let's see. Talk about that a minute. Okay, 4 primary groups of visitors. There's 3 agendas and 4 primary groups. You have the Grail line, Emerald Order, Elohai, and the Ruby Order, Nephilim, Elohim. Then you have the Belil Sun, Anno Elohim, and the Seraphim, Draconian, Black Suns. So there's 2, that you have those 2 Grail lines running. One of them is an Anunnaki Nephilim Grail line that's meant to help people with that coding, and the other is the original primary Grail line. So they're the 4 primary groups, and right now there are 3 agendas running. These 2 groups, the Grail line groups, are working on upholding the Emerald Covenant and helping humans to get out of this predicament. The other 2 are running control agendas, and they're fighting with each other as well. So that's going to be the saving grace of all of it. They're going to conquer themselves by division, because right now there's all sorts of rearranging and fighting all the way up the dimensional scale between these matrices. It's all about who's going to control the planet when we go through the Stargate opening cycle, and who's going to control the races from that point forward. If it goes well, which it probably will, humans will simply get control back over themselves, the way it was intended to be. Okay, let's see. Yeah, the Diamond Sun agenda is the one that's running the Emerald Order, just so when I refer to that, you know what I mean. See? Yeah, okay, go on. See, when I do little ones like this is meant for you, basically for you to read. So I scan them real quick and just touch on, things I want to plug in. But you want in-depth, then, read the text is worth it. Okay, all right, this is good stuff. We start reclaiming your right to choose what not to do in visitor contact. Okay, there's a lot of things you can do, but there's certain things we really advise not to do if you want to retain your freedom of choice. One of those things is don't be naive and think that all contact is beneficial. Don't view visitors as our creator gods, as our space parents or our saviors. Okay, this is where a lot of people get into trouble. Just because they're more advanced right now, a lot of people are conditioned into thinking we're lowly, pathetic beings, and they're so much more majestic than we are, they're more godly than we are, we have to listen to them. It isn't that at all. They might be at a higher stage of evolution in certain areas, but many of them, even though they can do holograms before your eyes and do magic like you can believe, are not even as spiritual as humans are. Just because they can do magic tricks does not mean that they're spiritually pure or that their motives are pure. There's a little saying in some of the spiritual groups out there that the light can deceive, but the sound tells the truth. The sound is the vibration, the undercurrent of energy. Because you can make a hologram, make it look like anything. It's the energy signature behind it, that scalar template behind it, that you can learn to feel and sensitize to. That's where you will find the truth. And when you're dealing with people who do holographic insert technology like these guys, you need to learn to feel it out. Some of the best things to do are look at it and say, that's interesting, close your eyes, and then just move your body through it, feel it. And what you get hit with in the heart chakra, or what you start to feel in your body, it's telling you something. It might not be negative, it might be something in your own field that needs to get cleared out. So there's a lot of sensitizing things you need to learn to do. And you'll learn, if you want to, the technologies are there to learn. Okay, let's see. Yeah. You gotta realize, the answer to this one is you realize that we can be equally as powerful, majestic, and wise once we have our spiritual maturity through activating our DNA strands. Our potential is actually greater than many of theirs. That's why they don't want us to reach our potential, because we will have more power, awareness, and connections up in high places than they do. All right? Second thing you really don't want to do is expect human experts in government, religion, psychiatry, medicine, etc. to save you. They may be able to help you, to try to comfort you, to try to listen. But they don't have the answers either, unless they happen to be going for the last number of years on spaceships getting conscious training. People that are having contact, very intensive contact, that are being trained by groups that really care about humans. These are the people that have most of the information right now. These are the people that could be you a year from now, if you want to make contact and to begin working with it. Okay? The Guardian Alliance, for the first time during this conference, has begun processes of contact protocol. And I'm supposed to teach other people that want to get in contact with them. They've never done that before. It was always just us. And it was beginning to be a big burden, because there's just too much that has to be done and too much that has to be taught. So people that want to contact them, that we're going to give a technique, tonight we're going to run through it again, what we're going to do in the field. You can also do it at home to be in personal contact with the Emerald Order, if you so choose to do that. If you choose to do it, there is no obligation. They're not control matrix. Your free will is respected. In fact, they will not intervene unless they are asked. The only ones they intervene with directly are the ones that are incarnate members of their matrix directly. That's where they might initiate contact with you. I had contact clear through because I remember incarnating out of their matrix. Some people maybe have contact with them already. And if they initiated it with you first, it's probably because you're one of them incarnate. And you just haven't fully awakened yet because the DNA is not fully activating it. Okay, so don't expect to be saved. We have to learn how to save ourselves here. It's really not that hard, okay? Now, they have a little more knowledge than we do. Our experts here have a little more knowledge than we do regarding the realities of contact. We need to become our own experts, and we can do this by finding the inner master. The master within. It has to do with our higher dimensional levels of consciousness that connect us directly to source. We have our own conduit. All right, another thing is don't become dazzled and seduced by the glamours of visitor contact. They can present themselves as angels. They can present themselves as Elvis. They can present themselves as anything they want to get your goat. Okay? If you happen to have a visitor manifest, and you have to feel this out. Do I feel like this is trying to control me? Is it really doing what it's saying? Or do I feel like someone's trying to control my energy here? You have to learn to feel this out. Because they can tell you sweet words. They can do amazing things and make wonderful things manifest before your eyes. Wanting you to, wow, the gods are here. There are some real ET groups out there that I feel bad for these people. The Elohim are really running around in circles. They are literally in like this space trance where they're just in daze mode all of the time because they're so tuned into the higher frequencies, they have no idea that they're being hijacked right out from under themselves. So you got to be aware that, okay, it may be cool what they can do, and they may be good guys, and like, wow, you can grow up to do that too. Once you activate it, and you get to be 12, you have to be able to do this stuff. So don't be overly impressed by demonstrations of things. We're trained in our culture to be impressed by the outside of things, to look at an image and, oh, that's a beautiful person. It may be Jack the Ripper in that body, but if it's handsome, it's wonderful. It's a very good time to start looking to the inside of things and seeing what's in there rather than making value judgments about how we'll react to something from what's on the outside. Okay. Let's see. Okay. Do not engage contact before you've learned how to frequency still your personal multi-dimensional bioenergetic field. Which simply put is, please learn the Mahara Seal technique to be able to protect your fields. And part of this learning is learning simply the structure of your anatomy. It helps a lot when you're a little kid to learn about your internal organs and those kind of things. So like if it's time to go to the bathroom or something, not this mysterious magical process that's happening, you know you have a bladder in there. Okay, there's a real process that goes with it. By learning your anatomy, your multidimensional anatomy, it becomes that simple. Oh, I'm getting this sensation. I know what this means. This means I do this. So it becomes just as normal and logical as what we associate with physical body processes. That's why we're teaching. That's why the Emerald Order is moving in this direction with their teachings. Rather, we've not even hardly at all focused on my contact history or what I've done. I gave you guys a little bit of it because you're a UFO group. But usually we're right into the teachings so people can apply immediately. Okay, let's see. And the big one is, don't succumb to fear, feeling powerless and victimized. That is what they feed right into. You can look something scary in the face. You have two choices. You can choose to be terrified, or you can choose to remember you have an eternal self. You have a master within. It's part of your own consciousness. Nobody's jerking your strings around. It's you at a higher level of awareness. It's not stuffed into a little body that blocks out that awareness. If you know you have that part of yourself, you have ultimate power. No matter what. This is when we had the panel earlier, they say, well, are you afraid of death? Not at all. I am not at all. In fact, sometimes like, go ahead and make my day. It's a lot nicer up there. And I wouldn't be able to incarnate back in time, so, but I won't get out of that lucky again. I won't be that lucky to leave early. I have to see the drama through. You get a power by knowing the rest of yourself that no matter what anybody throws at you to intimidate you, you don't get scared anymore. You become absolutely fearless. It's an amazing feeling. You could go into a combat situation, people with guns and all those things, and know one of two things. Either I am completely divinely protected and I will not be harmed, or if I do get killed, it was my time to go and I have better things to do when I get to the other side. You'll find a peace in the face of fear, and you will just feel the presence of your whole self. And it is the same presence that people call God, because you're a part of that God consciousness, which I get into more in detail in that little package that you can pick up on the way out. But you need to know your power. That's the key to all of this. That's the remedy, is the solution. Even the guys in the government, the one world order guys, they don't want you to know this. The funny thing is, they don't even know this. If they knew this, they wouldn't be trying to get power off everybody else, because they realize they have power themselves. We have power to manifest. Once we get past the little nonsense of trying to not let anybody else take our power, then we can get into the good stuff, like we have the power to actually manifest things like you'd like to see them. But that's later. First, you got to get your field integrity and get rid of the fear and look at the drama first. We will be teaching manifestation technique eventually too. Let's see. All right, so we're done with that one. This is posturing yourself for empowerment and contact. View yourself as an equal to any visitor. I don't care how big they are, how important they are, what title they have, and you know what this applies to humans too. I don't care if it's the President of the United States. I don't care if it's the Pope. Respect them as a fellow being. Honor that. Honor the job they're doing, and if they're doing a good job, with a double honor them. But do not consider yourself as lesser or lower than them. You have divine potential just as much as anything else in the universe. We are all created out of the consciousness of God. Okay, if you want to put it in spiritual terms, the energy that we are composed of, that creates our consciousness, our conscious awareness, we are made of the units of the consciousness of God. We are all blessed beings, all blessed. All beings are blessed. If we could learn these things, we wouldn't have these power dramas. We wouldn't be impressed by presidents and popes and people who walk around with real important airs. We wouldn't feel little and insignificant compared to them anymore. We'd say, no, you have ego problems and shit. Which isn't always true. Sometimes, see, leaders are born because sheep want leaders. When people act like sheep and they're more comfortable not taking responsibility for their own actions and finding out what's going on, they want somebody to do it for them, kind of like the perpetual parent concept. Some people just don't ever want to grow up and handle it themselves, so they will find a leader to represent their beliefs for them. That's what happened with Hitler. There were groups of people that were wandering sheep, and he focused that energy for them. They created him as much as he created them, the whole movement. So it's kind of a back and forth power struggle thing. Hold your own power, and you take yourself out of that framework. Okay. Yeah, hold your own power, decision, and authority over your evolutionary destiny. And again, this is dealing with anybody, ETs, government that's trying to do nasty things to you. Clergy that's telling you that you have to go to a priest to get his approval, to get God's approval. I'm sorry. I respect priests. My uncle is a priest. And I respect the man for having a love of God and wanting to serve God. But you do not have to go to any other human being, ET, intermediary angel. You have the ability to make a direct connection source. And that's something that was taught in the early Christian churches before they destroyed the original books. The books of Enoch talked about that. The 6 books of process that were written by Joshua 12 talked about that. They also told you the ascension mechanics. Boy, and I see them made sure they got up there real fast. I think some of them are still holed up in certain places in Rome that I won't mention. Something to do with the catacombs, I believe. Okay. We need to be willing to take responsibility for our own conscious evolution and don't expect others, here, there, or anywhere, to do it for us. Because as soon as you decide, I'm going to let you chart my evolution, you're immediately putting yourself in a situation where somebody else is pulling your strings. You better hope they're nice. If you want to be sheep, choose your shepherds wisely. Make sure they know what they're serving. We all serve something. Choose well what you want to serve. Do you want to serve your own divine heritage, your own individual connection to Source God, that everything that has been used to manipulate us for thousands of years? Or do you want to serve a book that told you it was a certain way? Do you serve the written word of the law of God from 2,000 years ago that has been edited by the hands of man for 2,000 years? Or do you serve the living presence of the Spirit that lives and breathes through you? Which do you listen to? It's a hard choice that we're being faced with, particularly people who are religious in nature. Scientists are faced with another hard choice. What do I believe? I've been taught forever that anything I can't see, quantify, mathematically deduce, or put under a microscope and analyze is not real. Do you think it's an accident that science has evolved in a way that did not teach us interdimensional physics? Do you think it's an accident that they don't teach this as standard theory in the colleges that are breeding scientists? The government knows it. They're using interdimensional scalar technologies like HARP and a few other things. Why is it that the government can create all this neat stuff, but our scientists are just tripping over themselves trying to figure out if maybe there's a 4th dimension? Scientists have been duped just as much as spiritual people have been duped. And the duping has been by a group of humans who are connected to the stellar races, who are incarnates of the stellar races, that are trying to control here and keep us as stupid as possible so we don't learn how it works. Because you know what? When we learn how it works, it's complicated as all heck, but it's also beautifully simple. The real truth can be as complex as you want, but it can be as simple as a child would understand it. And that's when you get into unified physics, and when you get into the law of spirituality, it becomes beautifully, beautifully simple, but you can plug in any level of detail into it that you want. So, we gotta make a decision. If we're gonna be the authority, or some book, or some priest, or some scientist organization, or some government, who's gonna be the authority in your life? Who are you gonna serve? There's a song somebody sings that says, you're gonna serve somebody, who are you gonna serve? You know? Serve your own divine God connection, your spirit connection, that life force that moves through you. And even scientists have to admit, no matter how much they've been trained to believe none of this is real, where does your consciousness come from? You are conscious, right? You're sitting here perceiving, wondering about these things, right? Consciousness does not come from a haphazard electrical response from brain cells that happen to be structured that way, creating this phenomenon called conscious existence. Scientists need to start remembering their incarnational heritage. If they play with the DNA techniques a little bit, and they start to get these really weird experiences that don't fit into their theories, they will start to find themselves, and they'll start to redefine science and show what it really is. Same thing with spirituality. It's being redefined. It's all being redefined these days. And that's because we've been lied to for so long. At this point, if we continue to live under the lies, our species will not survive. We will not only be hybridized into something that we won't even be able to recognize, we will end up fragmented as consciousness down here, because eventually this planet will be destroyed by the processes that are being run here. So it's a big thing we're in the middle of these days. Okay. Be willing to learn the reality of the spiritual law of one and the scientific laws of the universal unified field of physics. Instead of taking the scientific assumption that, well, it's wrong until we prove it right, why don't we turn it around just for a minute? All you scientific guys, we need you out there. I don't have time to go reading all your stuff and then plugging the science I know into that. I need scientists who care enough to say, okay, maybe if we flipped it around and said, instead of trying to prove it wrong or say, I'll believe it exists when I see it, flip it around to, well, let's say it exists. I'm just not seeing it yet. If that were true, what would I look for? How would I plug in subatomic particles and muons, let's say, into cheilontic morphogenetic science and scalar templates? There are answers to these questions, and physicists are the ones with the jargon to do it. So I'm challenging any of you out there, please try it. We need the help. This will make it very real. When these sciences become the normal understanding, humanity will reclaim its soul. We'll remember, all of this is very true. It's not just a new paradigm some wacky person who says she's an ET hybrid is talking about. Okay. So if we're willing to learn more, and willing to look at our paradigms and say, you know, there might be an awful lot missing, look where it has us so far. If we could remember where our race once used to be, when the cloister races were the dominant races here, and where they were very lovingly assisting the root races to evolve very rapidly. There were beautiful civilizations here with tremendous power, free energy power. There were no money systems. Money systems are a control system. It was not communal, it was not communist at all. It was called a synocracy, where each being had its own connection to source. Synocracy. Synchronicity put into a concept of social structure, where nobody told you what to do, but you would feel your connection to the whole. So people worked collectively in groups to help each other. People didn't compete with each other there, except for the Nephilim, because they want to control the planetary Templar. Those races ended up in wars because of the Nephilim races that were here. Okay, so if we're willing to learn, it will be worth it. Make remembering and operating from your spiritual center first priority in your life. More important than anything else in the world is your power base. Because without your power base, what are you? Powerless. If your power base is your spiritual, interdimensional, scientific, spiritual self, that needs to be first. Because no matter how much you love your children, or your husband, or your job, or your church, you are not going to be able to help them if you are disempowered. If you are falling apart or something is messing with you, you're not going to be able to help those people you love. You have to put your spiritual commitment before even the things you love most dearly out here. And then you will be able to serve those people and things to the absolute highest level possible. That's the little trick. Most people, mothers especially, and I'm a mother, it's really hard. Oh God, if I had to make a choice, I'd have to choose my children. Wrong answer. Those children have souls too. Okay? They're not all alone. You're not their sole protector in the universe. You're here to help them embody the rest of their soul. If you realize your soul and you choose to honor that first, you'll be guided. Your soul and the child's soul will communicate with each other to form the best situation here. Those kind of choices, if you find them, between spiritual life and like child or spouse, they're tests to see what your answer will be. And if you give the right answer, you get it all back. If you have to give up something like, you move out on your husband because you can't deal with your spirituality or something, or you move out on your wife because she can't deal with it, and it's all a bummer, you have to give all this up. You find if you just do it easily and let it go, it comes back at a higher level and it gets fixed. So that's a little spiritual trick, and as you go into spiritual development, that some things are levels of your own self-testing yourself, just to make sure you understand how it works. Once you do, the tests are no longer there. It gets easier as you go. Okay, how are we doing on time here? Not too bad. Good. Okay. 3:30 now. Realize that the rules of the visitor contact, your visitor contact, will become solid as we begin to understand the nature of our own eternal self. This is the key. There's a lot, and most of it's going to be in that 7-page thing, because that would probably have us going in a discussion just on that for the next 3 hours. It's going to tell us our real relationship to these visitors. And it's a very intimate one, and it gets into, we perceive time a little bit different than it really is. And when we begin to understand, this is why I want to teach you about the multidimensional structure of your own identity first, before I get into the stuff that's in that written thing. I think I'll let you take it home, and you can read it there. And then you can write to me if you have questions. Because I have a feeling it's going to, oh my God, it's not bad. It's just kind of a new concept that hasn't been around for about 10,000 years. It's coming out in new age movies a little, but it sounds very fairy when they do it. We show the kind of science involved with it, so it grounds it, makes it seem much more logical and real, as it is. Okay, we can change them. Yes, but right before the fun part, where you get into the graphs. Okay, I spent hours and hours making these silly graphs to make it easier for people to see the concepts I'm talking about, because I know I throw a lot of stuff at people in words and, they wear out. Pictures paint 1,000 words. Reclaiming your power, the tangible reality of your spiritual identity. Breathing into remembering the roadmap to the eternal self to integrate your multidimensional identity. We're going to show you the roadmaps, the basic framework that we're working on. Rediscover the 15-dimensional human anatomy and corresponding levels of mind. We're going to learn to direct the scalar wave electrotonal template of consciousness in time to reclaim the original 12-strand DNA pattern. That is what bioregenesis is about. learning to use the mind to direct scalar waves. Thoughts are things. They generate electromagnetic frequencies, and electromagnetic frequencies have a correspondent under them, which is a scalar wave pattern. Because even electromagnetic signatures have a smaller pattern underneath them. This is the level that science has not yet detected. But eventually they will. And then we're all in trouble if they're still coming from the, one world order agendas that a lot of the government scientists people are plugged into. That's why I'm not giving you formulas right now. That's why I'm not showing you a whole bunch of things that plug the two sciences in together. This is for the people who are willing to work with it. They'll start getting the results. But most of the scientific community that's in the one world order will poo-poo this because it doesn't have the numbers that they're looking for. They're wanting the number formulas. And the Guardians told them when they tried to make contact, we won't give you the number formulas until you show us you're capable of handling that kind of power without destroying your planet. Right now, the Illuminati are in trouble. They're under Dracon control now, and they don't like it. If they had access to the number formulas that plugged in the science I'm talking about, scalar mechanics science, into their normal understanding of how science works, they would create World War III. Not with other human races. They would try to blow the Dracos and the Zetas out of D4 without realizing that to do that, they will crash the time grids here and bye-bye to the rest of us. So there's a reason why information is being withheld from the scientists. They were offered a choice. The Guardian Alliance had, on several occasions, from about 1940 on, attempted to contact them. They sent representatives in, secret meetings, the whole bit, offered them help, told them about the potential bullshit, offered to help. What they said was, you're going to give us weapons? They said, no, we're not going to give you weapons. We're going to give you spiritual teachings that you will learn how to behave in a way and handle your energy in a way that you don't need weapons. They didn't believe it. So they said, nah, we'll deal with the Dracons over here, or the Zetas over here, because they're giving us weapons and technology. Thanks, take a hike. That's what they told the Guardian races that came in. So we were sold out. Nobody asked us. I didn't see that on the ballots, the polls, which group of ETs do we want to deal with? Never put out there. Okay. So we're going to learn about how to plug in enough of the science to where we see where there's a system here. And there's a lot more to the system. You're going to be given enough that you can make it work inside your bodies. And that's what's most important. Because then the rest of yourself will guide you the rest of the way. And at the time when it's appropriate for the number formulas to be given here, for the concrete science that plugs in to be given here, it's going to be after 2017. After we see what happens as we go through now in 2017. Because it's so volatile right now, nobody knows exactly what's going to happen. Time is simultaneous, which means that everything already really happened, so we should know, except it works a little differently. There's something called probabilities. They're different time vectors out of the same moment point. Every moment point has a whole bunch of different time vectors coming out. It could be this one, it could be this one, it could be this one, it could be this one. Depending on what vibration rate the planet has will depend on what time vector it goes down. And right now, the vibrational rate of this planet and the consciousness of the people is shifting all over the place. So it's very, very difficult to detect between now and 2017 which precise future outcome we're moving toward. And we know which one we're trying to move toward, and it's doing pretty good so far. That's why I don't talk about being scared, because they're doing really well. The Guardian races are doing really well of getting the planetary grids together anyway. Okay, we're going to relook into this. Yes. Yeah, we're going to just touch on the bioregenesis technologies. When the Mahar seal that I taught you before to help seal your fields, that is the beginning of bioregenesis technologies. That's actually very powerful bioregenesis technology. It doesn't only protect you, it starts to activate your organic imprint for health. So it'll start from the inside out, recoding things that have been going wrong in the body. If it is used extensively with a lot of the other programs that they're progressively given, you can actually begin to either halt or begin to reverse the aging process. This is how strong this stuff is. This is the science of creation. It's the science of manifestation. And it has the potential. They used to regenerate organs with bioregenesis. You didn't have to worry about heart transplants. You just grow a new one. It was easy to do when they had the planetary grids activated for very strong free energy that they could then direct into the technologies of bioregenesis. And they had certain devices to amplify it and direct it. Light sound technologies. They're the technologies of the future, the ancient past. Through that, you can actually have the eternal body if you want. I guess that would be old after a while. Okay. So the solutions to the agendas that I talk about, the harmful ones, which I don't like to talk about too much, they are spiritual solutions because spiritual is a science. Okay? It's just as real as the stuff scientists are looking at here. It's just in a level of reality they're not looking at yet. So our solutions are spiritual, but that doesn't mean we're airy-fairy off in the clouds being brainwashed by Elohim or something. Okay, because there's a lot of that going on. If they're not teaching you mechanics, if you know people that are channeling them a whole bit, and they have these great angels that are leading them around, ask the master angels why they're not teaching the mechanics of the bioenergetic field. Why aren't they teaching them this stuff? This is common knowledge in the higher universal fields. If they're so high, they either know it and they're purposely not teaching you, why might that be? Or they're not so high after all and they don't know it. These are the questions people in the New Age movement need to ask. And if you know anybody in there, kind of gently, without getting them upset, try to get that awareness to them. Because they're being sucker punched right now. They're being taken and led down a road of ascension that doesn't lead to ascension because they're not giving them mechanics. Okay.
Can you take a potty break?
You want to take a potty break? Then we'll get into the real fun stuff. I can go forever. You want to take a 5?
Yeah.
Okay. Your long lost friends. It's called your body. It's called your interdimensional self. There's really a structure here. And again, it's all built on scalar templates. Scalar wave templates, standing waves, little flashing on and off points of frequency. Okay. Now, the first part, and I'm going to give you a crash course. We have done long workshops on these things and like different aspects of it. It's not something you're going to learn every part of overnight. And one part that gets directly into the very specific anatomy of the scalar templates is called the Cathara level. I'm not even going to throw that at you tonight. I'll just let you know that it's there. These are some of the outer levels of your anatomy to give you the basic structure so you start to understand the roadmap here. Then there are very intricate levels of the scalar templates that get into something called crystal seals, which control the body's particles and how they stay phase locked into dimensional bands, and how you can change that by releasing the seals so the body can shift the time continuum, aka time travel, or enter Merkaba. So it gets very, very intense, some of these things. I'm not going to throw all of that at you tonight. What I want to give you tonight is a basic understanding of the parts you're dealing with and you're walking around with on a daily basis. So once you know some of those parts, and you'll have these diagrams right in those packages, so you can take them home with you. A lot of them aren't published anyplace yet, because we just don't have time to get the books done. So at least you have the diagrams. I found them tremendously helpful in teaching, and also in remembering for myself where were what parts. So with this, I'm going to start with, now this diagram gets into the crystal seals grid. I'm not going to identify too much of that. These little star-shaped things here, these are part of the beginning of understanding the crystal seals. In Voyager's 2 Secrets of Amenti, we start to introduce this. This diagram is in that book, and it talks a little bit about the DNA and about the star crystal seals and the seed crystal seals and what they do. Right now, what I'm most concerned about is showing you the basics of the chakra system. There's a bunch of different chakra systems out there. There are people teaching 7 chakra system, and people teaching 12, 13. They're not teaching the full 15-dimensional spectrum. There's some people that are teaching like 560,000 chakras. They're not talking about the primary chakras. They're talking about all of them. There's thousands and thousands of little chakras on the body. Now, chakra is an energy center. What a chakra does, it has a little, what's called a seed seal in the center, which is a scalar pattern. It draws in frequency from the unified field around you. As we walk around, our bodies are actually processing energy from the atmosphere. They're processing frequency in the form of scalar patterns. There's an interaction that's constantly happening between the human body, human consciousness, and the space around you, and everything that's in the space around you. The chakras are energy filtration systems. They're a pumping system that keeps the interdimensional energies running through the body particle base to keep it alive. It's the life force circulatory system. And it's one of the more outer layers of the subtle body systems, the subtle energy systems, the energies they can't detect yet, they call it subtle. Well, this is one of the outer levels. There are many deeper, deeper, deeper levels that we get into when we go into Cathara healing. Now down here, you have the base chakra, and that draws energy in from the earth. It goes down, actually, it can come all the way down into the earth. And if we can lift that up just a little bit, so we can see the bottom here. This thing in the middle is called the central body current. Some people call it the main vertical current. It's a current of energy. To explain where it came from, I'd have to go into the whole fetal integration process with you, and that's another workshop. But there's a very specific way that the main vertical current forms in the fetal tissue from conception all the way through. So there's a whole process here that we do have recorded someplace on paper. It's important to know you have a main vertical current of energy that literally connects your energy system, your body and your subtle body systems to the planetary core, and also up into what would appear to be outer space. It goes up into the higher dimensional spectrums where you just don't see it anymore. When we look up, we don't see the dimensions, we see outer space. So there's really a line of energy that connects us to the planetary core all the way through this level of manifestation and all the way up through the higher levels of identity into the other dimensional fields. Our main vertical current is where the chakras form out of, and they form little vortices of energy. They all have two, they're like little bow ties. You have one funnel going this way, one funnel going this way, drawing energy in. One transmits energy. Actually, they both transmit and draw in at the same time. Some are more dominant where they'll be magnetic and they'll be drawing energy in. Others will be projecting energy out. So there's an electromagnetic balance between all of the chakras. It gets really confusing when we get up in here because there's a bunch of them running through the pineal gland that's been dormant in our race for a very long time. This is going to change as we progressively begin to activate DNA. Because when you activate DNA, you activate chakras. And when you activate chakras, you activate the systems, the body systems that are built upon those chakras. Underneath your particle base, you have an energy feed system that's following the template of scalar grids that gives your body its form to begin with. So the chakra system feeds different organ systems. The chakras that are located down in here feed life force energy in through the organs that are down in this area of your body. When we have the first chakra down here, and it's associated with the reproductive processes, and so is the second one. This is the second chakra here. It's called the sacral chakra. This is called the base chakra. Now, the base chakra is singular here, but if you look all the way up at the top, what's called the seventh chakra is actually the other half of the cone of the base chakra. And it's energy coming in and energy transmitting out. They actually can work both ways. They'll draw in and transmit either way, depending on really the stage of evolution you're at. It changes as your DNA strands activate. I'll tell you a little bit the connection between the DNA strands and the chakras too, because it's directly connected. Okay, so we have base chakra 1, chakra 2, the sacral chakra. This is connected to a level of your identity that's known as the emotional body. This is where you get the feeling of emotion. And when people are doing in the New Age movement, they do all these emotional body clearings and that kind of stuff. They're working with the energies that are about out here in the bioenergetic field. They correspond directly to the second chakra. The second chakra processes D2 frequency, dimension 2 frequency. The second chakra is connected to the second DNA strand template. The third chakra is connected to the three-dimensional mental body, where we get our mental focus here. That processes energy from the third dimension. That is connected to the third DNA strand template. See how easy this system is? This is really how it works. It's an eloquent